We're just gonna go to that. All right. Oh, and I forgot to switch over here. I hate it when I do things like that, but give me just a second. I will be in front of the camera momentarily. I promise. That's not really the camera angle I was looking for either, but yeah. And hopefully I'll be in focus because you know what? I did not focus the camera this morning, and it's probably not focused on my face. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Today is, what's today? Wednesday, the 7th of April. And we're in the shop again today. My name's Jeff, and you are in my wood shop, if you're here. And yeah, I had a busy Tuesday, lots of stuff going on. Right now, I'm actually trying to pull up my my different feeds here so that if I do have any comments, if there are any comments or whatever, I can address them. I stream on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch. So if you're going to Facebook, you would go to facebook.com/JR's Woodshop, all one word. If you're going to Twitch, JR's Woodshop, just search for JR's Woodshop. In the search, you'll find my channel there. And obviously on YouTube, it's not JR's Woodshop, it's just Jeff Ravel because that's my old channel name. And changing it, it's really a pain to rebrand or change your name for that. So I leave it on there for right now. And but the thing that I like is that I have I have to change this up. I have there we go. My views set up in here so that I can see any comments that come in. And that's what I'm doing right now. As I'm saying, I meant to do this earlier, but I had some connection issues and I wanted to be able to get online. So I have to add one more in here. I have to add my Twitch channel in here, just in case. Although I don't know that anybody in the world has ever watched me on Twitch. I don't think that's ever happened. But you never know, and I don't want to leave anybody behind. If they do pop in, I want to be able to address any questions from anybody who pops in. So I know it's kind of I probably overkill to stream on 3 different platforms. And some people say, oh, well, you're splitting your audience and blah, blah, blah. I don't really care about that. I'm here to do my woodworking and share my time with you for a little bit, 3 days a week. And if it gets watched, that's fine. If it doesn't, it's not like I'm trying to pay the rent with these videos or anything. So hopefully, one of the reasons I do it is just if you're just, wanting to pick up a few tidbits here and there, or, or you're just bored out of your gourd because you're home and you're still home because, of pandemics and things. And you're like, I need something to watch, something that isn't on Netflix. Well, here I am working in my shop. So, and I'm working through projects, and you can kind of follow along if you're in the stream. I've got them all set up now, so I don't really need this, but I do need to set it. I'm going to leave it right here for the moment because it's in the way a little bit. I can't change my camera angles, but I don't need to right now. As I get a chance, I'll move that out of the way. I'm going to be careful. I don't want to mess up the laptop at all. So if you've been following me over these past, this is episode 15. That's crazy. I've done this like 15 times now. So there's a lot of stuff in the queue if you want to go back and watch these things. If you are going to go back and watch, I would suggest maybe popping over to the YouTube. It's probably easier to find them. I have these classified as what do you call it? There's a group of videos, and you can just click on the live stream videos, and it's a playlist. And then you could watch them all in order if you have nothing to do with your life, but watch YouTube videos of me talking and woodworking. There's 15 of them now. So knock yourself out. All right, before we get moving here, I'll show you what I was doing yesterday. Well, one of the things I was doing yesterday was I was finishing up gluing corners in. We started gluing corners in on Monday. And so this is the corner setup that I use right here. And I've got these little blocks that have little V cuts in them so that I can glue straight across this corner and get a nice clamp, or not glue across the corner, but clamp across the corner and get a nice glue joint in these corners. There's a special little clamp jig that I use for these corners. Get this little piece of wood in here, it's driving me crazy. So I use a special little clamping jig. It's just basically a 90-degree L-shaped piece of wood that I've cut these little V spots in, and then I can, because I've got this storage compartment on this side, I can't just put a piece of wood here, and I need to clamp these in and get that force in there. So I use this little L-shaped piece of wood with the little V grooves cut in it, and that way I can clamp straight across and get that nice clamping force against this glued up block in the corner. So I think when we were in the shop, I glued up 2 or 3 of them, because that's how many I can do at a time. I think I can do 3 at a time because that's how many clamps I have. It doesn't come down. I can always make more blocks, but clamps I don't have a ton of. But here's a good view. I mean, see, I'm in the way now. Here's a good view of that little L-shaped piece of wood with the V groove in it. And yeah, I just basically measure across. So I'll go from where the corner is, and I measure across, and I figure out where that line comes in, and I just cut a V groove so that I get clamping pressure this way. But this holds it in place. This side of the thing holds it in place on that corner, so it's stuck on that corner, and then I can apply all the pressure I need. So that's just something I kind of came up with out of my own little noodle there. It's one of those inspiration struck kind of things. And so this one's done. All these over here are done. I need to put all that clamping stuff away, but these are all done. And then I have this, we're calling this the oops box. And this one is a special situation because it did not have a storage compartment. And so it was not as long. So my clamps, I had to cut additional grooves in this one because the standard clamp holes would go right here. But you can see that I had, these are my standards right here. And then I have one here for when I make a shorter base. It's a 3/4 base. But this is for my standard base. Well, I needed a new one because this is an oddball base right here. This one turned out to be a little bit of a weird thing, but the corners on this side are all the same. So these are all the same corners. And this little block, and you can see, it's just a little V cut into this. This is oak, so it's pretty sturdy. It's not going to bust on me anytime soon. These present a little bit of a challenge. I need to get that clamping force on here. These are only clamped on one side of the corner. These corners right here are they're glued on both sides. I got to get my glue and clamp nomenclature out of the way. These are glued on this face and this face. So there's 2 faces for that corner that are accepting glue and getting clamped in. This one was a little bit more of a challenge because these pieces right here did not actually fit against the back of this little brace that I've got in here. And so what I had to do was, and hopefully these aren't glued in place. There we go. So I had to get some little spacers. They're really thin, but they're spacers to create a gap because these needed to be positioned perfectly for the machine. And I had to get these little spacers in here. Let me get this clamp out. But then I could use the same L bracket, but with a new slot cut in it. So I just cut a new slot in there, match up, and hopefully, yeah. My big fear was that glue would get out from the joint and then stick these in there, and then I was going to have to cut them off. But let me show you what I'm talking about in terms of that space. Got all kinds of stuff in here. I'm going to take all this stuff out so that you can see that there is a gap. So I've got this little piece of wood right here. This is what the lid sets on, but there's a gap between this piece of wood and this block right here. If I didn't have those spacers in there when I tried to clamp this, it would have shifted the whole block, that whole corner piece. It would have shifted it back. It would have slid. So I needed to put those little spacers in there, and then glue it down, and now it should fit perfectly. Now I can put my lid in here like so, and these are positioned now that when I put my machine in here, let's make sure this works. This machine fits in here like that. Look at that. That's beauteous. There we go. Take the lid out. It, it was an oops box. Like I said, this was an afterthought. So what I decided to do was, I cut this too long. It was supposed to be a standard base that just came across here. There wasn't supposed to be a compartment in there or anything. And I goofed it up, and I'd already put a, take this back out. I'd already put a logo on the front. I'd already carved one in. So there's a logo on the front. And because I had already carved in a logo, I couldn't shorten the box up because then the logo would have been off center, and that would have just bothered me to no end. So I came up with this little design that I don't think I will be selling this one. In fact, I won't be selling this one. I'll be gifting this one to my wife. But it was kind of interesting, and maybe it's something that I will pursue in terms of just making an extended bed. So kind of maybe proof of concept. Maybe this little mistake will turn into something that I can make more of later and sell. So we'll find out. But anyway, that's what I did yesterday. Was I finished gluing these up. I just took these out of the clamps, and now these corners are really super well set in there. And like I said, the corners are what actually gets all of the weight from the machine. The base gets no weight. It's just there as a positioning. That base, that block goes and fits down on that bottom, but it doesn't rest on the bottom. Its whole holding is on that glue that is applied to the sides. So that's what holds up those machines, not the bottom. The bottom, because it's just a rabbet, and you don't want to put a lot of weight on although I haven't tested it, it might actually hold a lot of weight. It's not something that I've tested, but I don't know if I really need to test it or not. This system works out really well. It's similar to, like I said, this is similar to a traditional base. I mean, they don't make them just like this, but they did make a base that was constructed with the same joinery and had lids in them. Their lids were metal lids usually. I use a wooden lid for mine, and my compartments are much larger. But they have little blocks in the corners that they use. I think they put leather on the top of theirs just to kind of whatever. I just advise people to use felt feet if they need to space them and get them even. I was talking last week how uneven the beds are on these sewing machines. Even though they made millions of these things, I'm not sure how they were cast. And they're cast iron machines. I think they're cast iron. But when they made the casting, the beds on these things are very they're very uneven. They're not the same measurement from corner to corner. If I measure this with my calipers, I get 4 different measurements on each corner. And so that makes it really difficult to actually figure out how you're going to set blocks. If I was making one custom for this particular machine, then yes, I would be able to make those so that it was perfectly balanced for this machine. Problem is, I don't know what your machine is if you're buying one of these. I mean, I know maybe what kind of model or what size it is, but I don't know the exact thickness of your base there is and so I just kind of come up with a not random, but an average height. And what I try to do is get that height low enough that it's not going to pop your machine too high so the bed of the machine won't be sitting too high off of the sides here, but you'll be able to basically get felt feet and then raise up, depending, like if you've got one corner that's tipping, you can put a felt foot underneath there and then get it to balance out and be even. To me, that's just the easier thing to do. Felt feet are cheap. You can get them at Walmart or craft stores or Home Depot or Lowe's. They sell those little stick-on round felt feet, and they do a great job. So there's no reason to have to go and try to individually customize these things, because it would just be impossible for me. People would have to send their machines in, and that's not happening. And besides, I think I said I don't do custom work anymore, or very rarely do I custom work. So, all right, moving on. We're going to be doing more work on these in just a few minutes. So these had to get to a certain point in the process that we can now move to the next step, and that's going to be roundovers on the corners. We're going to do a 1-inch roundover on the corners. We'll get to that in just a minute. The other thing that I did this weekend, I keep thinking it's like Monday. It's not, it's Wednesday. The other thing I did yesterday was I went ahead and stained all the pieces for this toy sewing machine base table, not a base. This is a table. And so I stained all of the pieces for the table. They turned out pretty nice. That looks nice, right? I like that. It's good color. This is all cherry, but I use a really dark, it's called a Kona color stain. And I love the way it works with the cherry. You still get a little bit of that, that amber hue that comes through from the cherry. So it kind of looks like the old machines were stained dark, like a dark brown, but they put a, what did they put on there? Usually it was the finish that they would put on there would yellow over time. And so this is kind of that same deal where I get that amber color through. So even though I'm not yellowing them over time, it does kind of have that look to it, which I kind of dig. It's kind of nice. Nobody's ever complained. They still sell. Anyway, these are done being stained. I did that. This is called a pitman. So this little rod right here attaches to the foot pedal right here. So this will attach in here to the foot pedal, and then as you pedal, this goes around and it attaches to this wheel right here, which will be mounted on the side of one of those legs right there. So basically what you're doing is you're cranking this thing around with your foot and getting it to spin. There will be a leather belt that goes on there and goes up through the tabletop and then attaches to the machine, and that's what makes it all sew. So I did the pitman, I did the legs, and these were all custom fabrications to replace some original really, really bad legs that were, they had just seen better days. And some of them were actually, somebody else had done a replacement and done a really, really poor job. And then also I made new drawers that will go underneath. And so these are the drawers. This actually mounts to the underside of the table so that when you're sliding your drawer in, it just slides in with these things and they come all the way out. I also showed off last week, I got some new drawer pulls for these. So I got some nice brass, what are they? Bronze. So I got some aged bronze little tiny drawer pulls for these things. So I'm going to put a couple of drawer pulls on these. I hit these with some satin polyurethane. I don't like it. I'm not a fan. First of all, oh my Lord, it smells so bad. It is crazy smelly stuff. I did it outside. I opened the garage door and kind of put it right out in the front, but oh my God, it smells terrible. I hate that smell. I would much rather use lacquer. And so either a flat lacquer or typically I go with a semi-gloss. So these legs will get a semi-gloss lacquer, and that's what I usually put on my bases too. That poly is just, it's disgusting smelling. And it lingered for a really long time. And so, yeah, I'm not a fan. What did I use here? I used Minwax Fast Drying Polyurethane Seals and Protects Clear Satin. First of all, the spray mechanism on here, not that great. You have to have the can perfectly vertical in order to get a nice spray out. Well, when you're doing things that are laying flat, it's hard to get that perfectly vertical can going. Probably when it was new or when it was full, but as soon as you get low, you have to have this thing straight up and down to get any sort of even spray coat out of there. So not a fan of that. And then, like I said, just the smell and stuff. And also, I mean, I guess that's a satin, but I'm not a fan. So lacquer is the way I will go on these, like a semi-gloss lacquer. That'll be perfect. And, but drawers done. It's all done. And the other thing I did was I bought some new hardware. So this foot pedal fits through on the on the legs, this one long pole right here fits through each side, and then there is a nut, and but I only had one nut on there. I'm not sure what happened to the other ones, but anyway, I bought some new nuts, nice and shiny, and some washers, and I'll put a washer and a nut on the other side to lock these in place once I reassemble it. There's also a pin right here, and this is what the pitman gets attached to the foot pedal with this pin. And all I'm going to do with this is drive the pin back in. I didn't remove it all the way. I just knocked it out enough to get the old pitman out. And then I will drive it back in and secure the new pitman in place. But yeah, so I went to Home Depot and got my little bags of hardware to fix that up. So that was yesterday. So really close on this. I think it's supposed to be a beautiful day outside. I'll take these out today and do some lacquer on them, and it'll be ready to be assembled by Friday. I'll let the lacquer cure for a day or so. The beautiful thing about lacquer, at least spray lacquer, and I use rattle cans for a lot of this. I have a spray system, but I use that for larger things. But the great thing about lacquer is that it settles. So the one thing is when you spray it, it settles. The other thing is that it has solvents in there that make it settle into the layer beneath it, so that you don't have to, like polyurethane, you should spray and then you should kind of scuff it, and then spray again and then scuff. And lacquer, you don't get that. Because it has solvents, each layer kind of melts into the layer below it. And then you can build up a whole bunch, and then usually what I'll do is I'll just hit it with a like an 800 grit paper at the end, just to take any little fuzz burrs off, and then I spray it one more time, I leave it, and that's my finish, and it's beautiful. So very little sanding. It dries super fast. You can spray, and 15 minutes later, you can put another coat on. So I can get 4 or 5 coats in like an hour and a half. I have 4 or 5 coats on there. Now, once it's all done, like I said, I'll hit it with an 800, I'll spray one more, and then I let it sit for a couple of days just to finish curing. But now if I'm going to ship it, I let it sit for a week before I ship it, because you want to make sure that the lacquer has completely cured. And because I bubble wrap things and everything, you would hate for like bubble wrap to stick to the lacquer. That would be horrible. So I usually let them, if it's something that's going to be, like if I make one of these bases and I ship it, I let it sit for a week before I actually will ship it. Once that lacquer has fully cured, then I will send it out the door, but not until then. But on something like this, I can do the assembly, and it's just going to sit there. So it's going to cure while it's sitting there. It doesn't have to be shipped. It'll get picked up in person because that's for a friend. And so I don't have to worry about that. Guitars are the same way. If you're sprayed lacquer on the guitars and you get that final lacquer finish on there, you really, before you do anything on the thing, you need to let it cure for like a week, week and a half. So that's really to let lacquers fully cure. I've seen some different discussions, and people say it's like 3 days, but I go a week, and I've never had an issue with it not being cured fully. So I kind of err on the side of caution, but that's just how I go. All right. So like I said, I was at Home Depot, picked up the hardware and things like that. And let me just, not push everything off here. One other thing on here. So when I was at Home Depot, I've been wanting to pick up a replacement tool. So this is it's a nailer. It's a brad nailer. And it is an air actuated brad nailer. So you need, it says 120 PSI maximum. You don't need 120, usually like 80 PSI or whatever. I can go from 5/8 inch long to 2-inch long brads in this thing. This is Harbor Freight. It's a Harbor Freight tool. Let me get you a little close up on it here. So it's just inexpensive little brad nailer. Brad nailers are awesome for doing things like, I did brads in this thing right here. So in these drawers right here, there's actually brads set in here. When I put the glue on here, because it's really kind of a difficult thing to clamp anyway, but I wanted to set these up really quick, so I just brad nailed these in right here, and it kind of gives it an old look. If I'm going to use it on something where it's going to be It needs to be prettier. What I would do is just fill the little holes. But the brad nails are great because if you're gluing the surface, you can tack a couple of brad nails in there, and it's kind of like having a clamp. It just holds everything together. Anyway, I've got this brad nailer, and it's okay. It does all right. My bigger problem is my my air tank. So I have a I don't know what this thing. Hang on a second. Let me look and see, because I don't want to call out somebody who's not. So it's a Porter cable. I think it's a 150 psi, 6-gallon. It's a pancake. Whatchamacallit, pressure thingy. And yeah, 160. So anyway, it's been okay. It served me well for a long time, but as of recent, I don't know. I've just had a lot of problems with it, in that when it builds up pressure, when it gets to about 90 pounds, the pressure relief valve pops out. It shouldn't. It should get up to my target pressure and then just shut off, and it does not. It's for whatever reason the pressure valve blows, and then it's psh, and I have to go push it back in and let it build up. And the other problem with it is that it's super loud. I mean, probably pushing over 100 decibels loud. And that's great. If you don't know, the 100 decibels is extremely loud. I'm looking to get a replacement, but I haven't settled on one yet. There's a company called California Air Tools, or California Air, that makes a, let me see here, California Air. They make some really nice ones. And the best thing about them is that they are super quiet. California Air Tools. So if you go to californiaairtools.com, you can find all of their compressors. And they have what they call a ultra quiet series. They have a quiet flow series for DIY homeowner type things, and they're pretty nice. The thing is, they're not huge. They have small motors. They're 1 horsepower, so they're not huge on the motor, and they're small on the tank sizes. But like they make a 2 horsepower 1.6 gallon. They make a 1 horsepower 4.7. The thing is, though, that they're, let me see if it says what the decibel out range on these things are. I know it's somewhere in the 70 decibel range, which is super quiet, and that's like having a fan on or something. I mean, it's that quiet. And so, because when I have this thing on, everybody in the house knows I'm using the compressor. It's brrr, and it's super loud. And then when that thing, the pressure valve goes and it kicks, psh, anyway, it's just super annoying. So I want to get a new one, probably going to be a California Air Tools. I did see that Harbor Freight actually has a new quiet compressor series as well. I might check them out. I have to go there and buy a couple of new little doodads this week probably. So I'm going to go check them out and see how theirs look. But these things run, I don't know, about, I think they're about $200 or so. Let's see. Let's just look real quick. I know this is like, you're like, you can't see what I'm doing here. But if I go to my shopping page here and I can see, oh, California Air compressors. So let's check that out under shopping. Let's go under shopping and see what they show here. So they make it, yeah. So here's like a 4.6 gallon, 1 horsepower, ultra quiet, oil free, and it's $209. You can buy that. Are they? Ooh, Home Depot sells one as well. These are steel tank. They're small units. I mean, this is a pancake one that I have, and it's, I mean, maybe this big around, and it's 6 gallons. So I'm thinking the 4.7 gallon is probably just about this big, and it's a cylindrical thing. But for $208, you can get it at Walmart. I think you have to order at Walmart. They don't actually carry them at Walmart. Now they make much larger industrial ones, but something that I need for really small, I use it, like I said, for doing things like this. I use it for filling tires and for blowing stuff off and just general around the house stuff that you use a compressor for. Nothing really complicated. And I'm trying to see, it won't let me go to this page, and I'm not sure why, but anyway, yeah, they're super quiet. Oh, here we go, 65 decibels, that's what I was looking at. So 65 decibels is really quiet in terms of a power tool running. But instead of just going that entire route, what I did was this. So just because I wanted to. This is a Ryobi Airstrike. And it is also a brad nailer. Now, size-wise, if you look, it's substantially larger than this one. You know, you could hide behind that one. There you go. It's much larger. This uses an 18-volt battery. This is just a 2 amp hour. This is part of the Ryobi One Plus system. And honestly, it's my first One Plus tool. I've got Makitas, and I don't know if we have any other battery ones. Makita is my main, like my driver and my drill are Makitas, but they make a ton of different tools. But I've had my eye on a wireless, air compressorless brad tool, because you can just take this anywhere you need to work. You don't have to drag a hose around. It's just like, and you're done. I mean, it's really that simple. I was playing with it. I got this little piece of wood right here, and I've just got some 5/8 loaded in here. So, like, here's how it goes. That's it. Brad inserted. You can control the depth, so exactly how deep you want this thing to travel. You set it up for the brad nail that you're using. Right now, I have so I've got 5/8 brad nails in there. Let me switch over so you can see here. So I've got some, did I lose my camera? Why did I lose my camera? That's weird. That's odd. It's plugged in. It's powered. It should be on. Why did I lose my camera here? Hang on a second. That's strange, because I plugged the power into it. So I got to turn this back on. You know, gotta love live TV, right? Are you gonna work or are you not gonna work? It's not gonna work. Well, that's just really strange. GoPro, you're letting me down. I hate it when that happens. Hang on, I gotta see the back of it here for a second. Okay. There's the one little blink, and all you can see on the back of this thing is blinking lights, so it doesn't really show me. I've got the power turned on for it. Okay, and I'm just gonna check all my plugs here just to make sure everybody's plugged in. And we are plugged in. I'm gonna unplug it and plug it back in again. Okay, I think I need to turn it back on. Unless my power is not plugged in here, which it should be. You know, it's always something. Always something. All right. I don't like that. I'm gonna go, that's my main like close-up cam. So give me just a second here. Let me walk around, make sure that I actually have it plugged into the power, which I do. It's plugged into power. So I'm not sure what's going on with the GoPro. It's kind of weird. Kind of strange. Should be, is it on now? It's not on now. Huh. Well, because that should be turned off and this should be turned on. I'm holding it forever. Okay, come on, GoPro, do your thing. Okay, GoPro not working at the moment. Very strange. I wonder if I can just go straight in with this power instead of, let's try it that way. And let's try turning it back on again. No, nothing? Nothing. GoPro, you're so letting me down here. This is usually a pretty reliable camera too. All right, well, that is disappointing. You're just staring at a black screen going, what the heck? It's a black screen. And I should have not taken it off, but I can't see it on. No, I've got nothing. here? Okay, I've lost all my cameras. All of my cameras have now vanished. What is going on? This is weird. I've lost all my cameras. What is going on here? Okay, I'm gonna turn the power off and reboot this thing. Maybe I will reboot this thing. Okay, there's nothing there. And turn it back on. And none of my cameras are showing up. Okay, this is really strange. I apologize. Because they all feed through a central system here. And this goes into my computer as a USB. This USB is on, connected. Let me check it over here just to make sure it's still connected. On, try a different connection. Different connection there. Well, this is just really strange, folks. I am so sorry. I'm just gonna switch to this one for a second and then switch back. I've lost, there we go. Thank you. Wow, that was really weird. I had to reset that, and I apologize for that in advance, or in arrears. I guess it'd be in arrears, right? Because that was really strange. It should not have done that. Let me see if I got all my camera angles back. 2, 3, 4. 4 is not here. I'm gonna see if maybe I turned that off. Did I turn that one off before? There we go. Oh my gosh. Wednesday, huh? Feels more like a Monday. All right. Where was I? I wish I could go and edit this down. Unfortunately, we're live, so it is what it is. I can't go back. But it is live, so those things do happen. Excuse me. All right, let me give you a little bird's eye view of how this works here. So it has a compartment that slides open on here, and then you load in your nails. Now I'm using a 5/8 inch brad nail in here, and you can load this up to from 5/8 to 2 inches on this thing. So it can shoot a nail pretty far. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And then you just basically load it up by pushing this spring thing up here. You do it harder than that. There we go, and it clicks in place. And now you've got your nails loaded in here. Like I said, you can go to up to 2 inches on a brad nail. I typically, depending on what I'm nailing, like this is a really thin piece of wood to a thick piece of wood. It's 3/4 of an inch. So you can see, I missed on the top here, whenever, but you can see how this little, hopefully you can see, the little nails here are sticking up, the ones that I didn't, that I missed the piece of wood, but you can see how far down they go into that 5/8. So driven, or into that 3/4 piece of wood. So driven in pretty far. And a lot of times if you're like attaching trim or doing things like that, making a quick build, a lot of times if I'm just making a quick jig for a shop project or whatever, I love these things. Now this has what they call a no-mar guide up at the top here. So this little piece can come off, and that is just a no-mar protection. So if you're on here, you're not gonna leave a mark by pressing this into your finished piece of wood. The nice thing is it has a depth gauge right here, so you can rotate this. It tells you how deep it needs to go. You can do, like if you're gonna do multiple actuations on this thing, it has like a single and then a multiple on here. So if you do the multiple, what you do is you just hold the trigger down, and as you press this all the way, here, I'll show you. So here's single actuation, right? So I push it in there, press once. Even though I'm holding this down, it won't actuate again. If I put this into the multi, now I hold the trigger down and do one. So every time that I press this spring-loaded trigger or spring-loaded guide into with my finger on the trigger, you have to hold the trigger down while you're doing this, but every time I would do this, it would fire another nail. So if you're doing a lot of stuff across a large surface, driving a lot of nails, probably a good reason to have that. I'm going to put it back on single because that's more comfortable for me. It also has a belt clip that you can add onto the side here. Like I said, this is the 2 amp hour 18 volt lithium battery. They make different amp hour batteries. But for what I need, this is more than enough power. I went ahead and already mounted the battery charger to my wall up there. Now, what I will say is that when I bought this, it was sold separately from the battery and charger. I got mine at Home Depot. So I got mine at the Home Depot yesterday, and oh my gosh, I'm just frog in the throat. And I had to buy the battery and charger separately. They did not sell them together. They sold this as a separate unit. And it's kind of because their OnePlus system is a modular system, so drivers and impact wrenches and all kinds of tools that use the same battery system. I don't know how many tools. There's probably at least 50 different tools that you can buy for that OnePlus system. Like I said, this is my first one, but a lot of the tools are sold separately, and then you buy the batteries and the charger differently. Now, I have a link. I put a link in the description below. So if you're interested in something like this, there is a link there. It's an Amazon link. Amazon actually sells the whole thing as a package. So you get the charger, the battery, and the tool for, I think it's like $200, which is about what I paid. You know, when you add the two together, I think this is like $129 at Home Depot. Then you pay $79 or something for the battery and the charger. My package was open for whatever reason on the charger, so I got a 10% discount on that. So for me, it knocked it down to about $200. But if you wanted to check it out, like I said, Home Depot makes it. There's a couple of other companies that make cordless, hoseless brad nailers. They actually make even larger nailers, like huge, like roofing nails and things like that, construction nailers. I mean, they're massive. They are just huge. And I don't do that much framing and such. If I did, I could see where something like this would really come in handy, because if you're doing framing, if you're doing like house framing or construction framing, you don't want to carry around a compressor and a hose everywhere you go. So I think this is really kind of the future of the technology of things like nailers and such. Milwaukee makes them, and Rigid and DeWalt, and I mean, pretty much all the big companies make wireless ones, at least the large ones. Now the small ones, I think DeWalt may make one, but it was much more expensive, and you pay for the name. I mean, DeWalt is it's a quality brand, but you pay for that name. You pay for that DeWalt name on there. And so I think even Rigid had one as well, but it was also more expensive. So this was, I won't call it bargain basement because it's very stout. I mean, but the outside's all plastic, and it's kind of rubberized on the handles, rubberized, and in the back is rubberized. Oh, and there's also you can control the amount of air flow kicking through this thing with a dial in the back. So I think I've got this dialed down to the way I like it, which is using these 5/8" brads. If I need to go deeper, usually what I'll do is just get a couple of pieces of wood that are the excuse me, that are the same species and thickness that I want a brad nail, and then I will dial it in. Brad nails are pretty cheap. You can get your nails anywhere. I've got tons of brad nails that I got from Harbor Freight, and like I said, it's a great tool. And if I get this compressor replaced, I would probably use that one again. But the big problem with these also is you have to make sure they're oiled. They need oil actuators and stuff. There's no oil to add in these, which I also love. So there's less maintenance. You plug a battery in. Now the batteries do fail over time, but this OnePlus system is pretty big, so I would imagine that you would get a lot of life out of your tool, because they will keep making those batteries for quite some time. And just I feel really stupid, but I'm going to show you something that I didn't realize until just as I was getting ready this morning, because this one right here has this little, I'm going to go back over here. There we go. It has this little trigger release. I think I showed, not trigger release, but a nail compartment release right here. And it's a different color, right? It's like light gray kind of thing. And you do that and you can see your nails, right? And I was like, well, that's really handy. I wish this had it. And then I looked at it and was like, well, I'm just dumb as a box of rocks. This whole time I've been loading these things through this top, which is really hard to do. There's a trigger up here, or a tab, and you can lift that and this comes up. And then you have to slide them all in and push against the spring and then get this clipped over. And the whole time I never realized that there's a button on the bottom here that allows you to do that. And then you just drop them in, and I'm really feeling stupid right now. But I'm going to share my stupidity with you because, hey, you know, learn something new. And look, there's even a handy little thumb thing right here that you can just click that back and, God, I feel so stupid. The whole time I've been using this. And then I come to find out this is actually to clear jams. If you get a jam, you can clear it with this. But I'm a guy and I don't read instructions, you know? Instructions, those are for losers or people who like to know how stuff works, which obviously isn't me. Anyway, great little tool. Central Pneumatic is what these are. Is that Central Machines brand that is ubiquitous with Harbor Freight. In fact, I don't think you can buy that Central Machines brand anywhere but Harbor Freight. Great little machine. I'm really just super excited about this. I actually have a project coming up I talked about earlier. I'm just going to make a really simple stand for my new bike, a tire stand for it, and we will be using this because I'm going to be gluing some stuff, and this takes the place of clamping a lot of times for glue ups. And so very excited about this little tool, adding that to my shop repertoire. I'm going to hang this back up in its place of glory right back here, and one day it'll get used again. I got to find a place for this one. It's a big tool. So I have to find a place for it somewhere in my shop. And maybe over here. Let's just get it out of the way for the moment. So I'm going to put it over here. Well, for right now, it can sit there. I have to find a new place for it. It can't live under there. But for right now, we're good. And for right now, what are we going to do? Let us go ahead and do some work on these bases. We've been talking about it. Let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to get these out of the way. Like I said, I'm going to try to get these lacquered today. That would be super fun. And I think, you know what? Let me just clear the dust off of here. Once again, this is my big problem with my shop is just having flat surfaces to rest things on when I'm trying to do other stuff and get things out of the way can be an issue. Now, what we need to do today with these bases is round these corners over. So the traditional Singer sewing machine base has a very large roundover on all the corners. And I've done smaller roundovers, and by smaller I mean like 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and they look okay. They just don't look like the traditional ones, and I kind of really fell in love with that traditional look. And so that's the look I'm going to go after. I need to put these out of the way. I'm going to rest this over here, not lose these pieces. I'm clearing off my router table because that's where we're going to be doing business here in a second. And I need to collect up my little blocks here and put them back where they belong because I will need them again at some point in time. So I just have a little box up on the top of a shelf there that I throw those in, so I always have a place to find my clamping solutions. All right, I'm going to put these all over here. I'm going to just move to this side of the table saw, and let's get zeroed in. Actually, that might be in the way there. I think I've got this one. There we go. So I got a camera position there. We can see this. And what we're going to do, like I said, I've experimented with some different sizes, and this is the bit that I've come up with. It is a very large roundover bit. I'm not sure exactly what this was made for particularly, but it's like a 1-inch roundover. And it takes a big bite out of the wood. So the one thing I did was I bought it in a 1/2 inch shaft. The 1/2 inch to me is just beefier and more stout and less prone to vibration. Now that being said, obviously you have to have a collet for your router that accepts a 1/2 inch shaft. So that collet obviously needs to be a 1/2 inch. And I have both a 1/2 inch and a, let me get this on here. There we go. So I have a 1/2 inch and a 1/4 inch collet, well, collets for my router. That's very squeaky. I apologize for that. And so I can switch between them as needed, depending on the bit that I'm using. You know, I switch between them. But like I said, when I'm doing something that requires that much of a bite out of the piece of wood, I really prefer, I mean, you can see the difference in the shaft sizes here. Hopefully you can see the difference in shaft sizes. So we've got a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch, and this is just so much beefier. And to me, you're going to get less chatter, less vibration. It's just a more stout option. So the 1/4 inch collet just pops right off, and just blow that out a little bit. Put the 1/2 inch collet in here, and now that slides right on there. Now I usually raise them up a little bit. Just, I don't know why I don't bottom them out. There's still plenty of shaft in there. But I also have to accommodate for having a plate on here and having the ability to lower this down just low enough to where it needs to be. So before I can put a new plate cover on there, I need to lower this down a little bit and then grab the correct one. Not sure which one that will be. I've got a whole assortment of them here. I think maybe this one. Nope, one larger. So this will be the 2 1/8 inch, just like that. And really what you want when you're getting one of your covers is you want to have enough area that you, if you have dust collection or whatever, that you're keeping it as close to the blade as possible without interfering with it, because you want to be able to provide a stable work surface right up to that edge. You don't want it, I could use a larger ring, like here's a larger ring right here, but then there's a big gap between the ring and where that blade starts, and I don't like to leave that much of a gap because you want to support your project as much as possible. All right, the next thing I need to do, and I've got this kind of in here, is I need to figure out where the bottom of this is going to sit, because right now you can see it's hitting this piece of wood. That blade is too high, and this is supposed to be a roundover, so you don't want it digging in and creating a flat edge. You want it to just be a nice gentle sweep. So generally what I will do is I just lower it down until the piece of wood starts to slide up the blade like that. So now it's going right up to the blade and it's not impacting. Now if I raise it up just a hair, you can see where it hits, and then just drop it just a tiny bit, and now, there we go. And now it slides right up into that. So that tells me that that's probably perfect for that. And I can remove the depth gauge. Now, the problem with this system, it's not system, but the problem with doing what I'm doing here and doing this roundover is that you can get a tremendous amount of chip out from this process. I think I have this one set up too. Whoa, I almost pulled my microphone out. Let's see if this, not that one, this one. There we go. You can get a tremendous amount of chip out from this blade as it pulls across. Actually, I like the other one better. I'm being fickle, sorry folks. There we go. As it pulls across right here, is it reaches this end, because there's nothing behind this piece of wood right here. So as that blade is kicking around, it hits this piece of wood right here, it'll just chip that wood right out, and you can get big tear out on this part of your project. And when that happens, you're kind of, you can try to repair it, but really it's just, you're in really bad shape at that point in time. You've created more work for yourself. You may not be able to repair it. I mean, it may not be fixable. What I have done is come up with a really simple solution, but it works really well. And that is to provide a backer board for the outbound section of my base. I will take a block of wood. I'm going to square this up. There's a little slot in there. That would not work. But I take a block of wood like this. I put it right at the edge. I get a clamp. Let me get a clamp right here. And I clamp this board down in place, just like so. So all I'm doing is clamping this down. I clamp it tight so that, I'm going to come over here so you can see this. So I'm clamping this tight. It's kind of dark right over there. Clamping this tight so that, focus, not focus, no focus. When this blade hits this part of the base, it has wood supporting those. And now if this blows out, if this thing blows out, I don't care. I care about it blowing out this edge. But because all these fibers right here are now supported by this block, I get no problem with that. So that helps tremendously in being able to minimize any tear out that I get from this. And tear out's a big problem with routers. I mean, it happens. So you have to kind of think of creative solutions to do that. So generally what I'll do is get a block of wood about like this size. I'm going to take this over real quick to the router table and just trim off these edges so it's kind of nice and squared up. And as you go from corner to corner, this end will be ruined, but you just rotate it and you just basically keep rotating till you've used up all four corners matched up with each corner you need to route. And if you've got a nice long piece of wood, you can just keep cutting those rounded corners off and keep using the piece of wood as it gets smaller and smaller. So that is my solution. It works really well, and it's really doesn't require that much extra work from me to be able to do that. Except that, like I said, I have to sometimes come over here to the router table or not router table, to the table saw and cut new ends for it. But I mean, considering the amount of work it saves me in the end, whoop, I'm doing the hose dance here. But the amount of work it saves me in the end by keeping my edges nice and clean, it's well worth any minimal effort that I'm going to do. I'm going to cut this up really quick. So I'm over to the saw here. And let's just cut these and get this nice and square. Okay, so there's a nice squared up piece of wood right there, a nice little block, and that's going to be good for one. And what I usually end up doing is I just go to the scrap bin and look for more. Here's another one. It's already squared up, so there's two. It has to be big enough that I can actually clamp with it. So I do take that into consideration. This one I can actually clean up okay, this one actually had that done to it. So let me show you what happened. So I've used this already as a clamp for doing corners. So you can see where these corners right here, hopefully you can see that. This corner has been rounded, but it actually is square on this side because I feed it into that roundover bit and then I stop. But this one has already been used for that. So I'm going to clean this one up right here. And I just cut the ends off and it's ready to go again. You need it to be square. I couldn't use this again on the, that's why I have to keep rotating the sides because I need these to be, I need them to be clean corners at 90 degrees to provide that, that stability for running that router bit through it. So Dusty, just come up with a new shroud. so dusty, so dusty. All right, I've got 5 bases to do, but I think I will just make one of these. I'll go back and clean one of these off when I get done, and we'll use it again. Maybe this one. This is, what is that? That's ash. That is some hard wood right there. It doesn't have to be the same species. You can use whatever species you want. So we'll start with this one. Just gonna clamp this in here. Now I have to go and I'm gonna put my air hose up here. It helps a little. And I'm gonna put the electric on here. So my router is not plugged in right now, which I never have my router plugged in when I'm doing corner or when I'm changing bits, because that's just bad practice. Even though it would be next to impossible for me to actually turn my router on without reaching under my table and grabbing it, the switch, and activating it, just because the way mine is done, and I don't have a switch hooked up to this thing, so I have to physically reach under and turn it on. But nevertheless, it's just a good practice. So let's go ahead and let's cut this. I'll show you how it's done. Let me move my power is over. Let me get the air hose over here real quick. Not the air hose, but the vacuum hose. And I'm just going to kind of prop it up to the table here, just to kind of get some airflow going. And then the other thing is, because this is a large bit, I turn the speed of the router down. So the larger the bit, the slower you want it to go. The smaller the bit, the faster the revolutions you can put on there. But I'm going to slow this one down a little bit. So let's go ahead and cut our first one here and see what we can get. Okay, the other thing I didn't mention is that I make multiple passes. I don't chew all that wood out at one time because it's a lot of wood being removed. But you can see there is the roundover, which is very nice, and no blowout on the end. So my ends are not blown out. Got a nice roundover, and then we can move on and just keep flipping this board. So what I'll do is I'll flip this board over that I just used. So I did this corner, now I'll just flip it, this corner down. And like I said, I just kind of have it nice and flush with the side here. And then all I'm looking to do is provide that support for the edge of my board. So let's go ahead and do another one here. Okay, so I'm going to show you. So I didn't have that, for whatever reason, it slid back from the corner just a hair. And I'm going to show you, even that little bit, if you look what happened, see that little piece of wood right there that's starting to fly off? Now that's not a lot. I do a little teeny roundover on this whole thing, but if that didn't have that block on there, this would be a much larger section. So that's why it's necessary, because this is the outbound and it's going to just chip away if you don't have it supported. So anyway, the other reason that I was going to say, not the other reason, and the big reason for turning the speed down is to eliminate the burn that you'll get. For whatever reason, you get a lot of burning when you use this router, but the slower speed does help minimize that. Now I'm going to make sure that I get this locked into that corner and that it doesn't, I think I bumped it when I was putting the clamp on, but like I said, that's why you do it, because you will get chip out on there. So All right, and so that's one of them done right there. So you can see all the corners now rounded over. It's a big round over. So like I said, yeah, I turn that bit speed down and make multiple passes, and then I will go through with the when I do my finish sanding, and I will refine those corners, get them sanded up nice, because this is all end grain now, and it requires some extra sanding on there. But as I start to sand these things, that will be taken care of. But I can move to my next one, and we can just keep on rolling. So let's go ahead and just kind of roll through some of these. So if you just want to kick back and watch, I need a new block. This one will have to be cut down before I get to the next one. This one's a little shorter, but it will do the job. It doesn't need to be super tall. It just needs to cover my corner there. There we go. All right, let's roll. So just one more example of what I mean by blowout. So that's a blowout right there. You can see this where it just took the fibers and just ripped them right out of the corner here. That's what I'm avoiding by running this through. And you can see it, that bit came right up to here, and then it just started pulling these fibers out away from the wood. So because there's no support on this side, they're free to just pop out. So that's why I run with support on my corners when I do this. So if you're ever routing something like this, I mean, if you're doing a small round over, it's probably not a big deal, but anything where you're doing a large round over where you're removing a lot of wood, I really highly advise doing something like this. Just finding a way to support that wood makes all the difference in the world in getting a nice, clean round over. All right, one more on this one. Okay, and just I know I might get some like comments from people going, you know, you should be turning that off when you're switching from one side to the other and everything. Um, I put my, I move everything back pretty far from the blade. I mean, this thing is cranking. I'm working about 12 inches away from this. So when I'm working on the wood, when I'm running it through right here, when I pull it off to do everything else, I'm at the back of my table and I'm staying well clear of that. Even though it's still spinning, I stay well clear. Now, you do you, I do me. If you're more comfortable turning it off every time, then absolutely turn it off. Because you know what? The big thing is safety is also a matter of your comfort level in doing things. If you're uncomfortable, for God's sakes, don't do it. I mean, if there's one tool that I probably have more respect for than anything else, it's this thing, man. It's RPMs. It's running at minimum 10,000 RPMs with twirling blades and whatever. And it could care less about my fingers and my feelings. It would have no problem ripping through them just like a piece of wood. So I very much respect this tool and I give it space and I act in the way that I think is responsible. Like I said, I don't change my bits while it's plugged in and everything else. If you're comfortable doing something and like I move this workpiece far away, get it set up, and then I approach it again, to me that seems like a safe way to do it. If you think it's not, then by all means, please turn it off and then get set up and turn it back on again. Because you know what? It's your level of comfort that really adds to how safely you work in the shop. I try not to be cavalier with my tools because I do respect the fact that I have digits and I want to keep them. And I don't want any injuries or anything. And I don't, excuse me, that was disgusting and I apologize. I do not want to damage my tools either. And because tools are expensive and blades and bits and everything else, it all adds up. So I try to treat everything as respectful as possible and safely as possible. So yeah, be safe, but it's like if you see somebody using a table saw and they'll run a piece of wood through and then they'll grab another piece of wood and push it through and they're doing repetitive things and they just keep pushing things through. They have a table on the backside or a bin where all the pieces are going. It's something that they have a very high comfort level in doing and they don't have any issues with it and they're working safely. You may not, and you might think, I'm going to make one cut, turn it off, get set up, make another cut, turn it off. There's nothing wrong with doing it either way. It just depends on your level of comfort. This I'm comfortable with. I've done these a lot, and I'm not changing this board right here next to the blade. I'm back a ways. So to me, I'm okay with it. If you're not, that's okay. I get it. You can yell at me and stuff. I'm okay with that because you know what? In my opinion, you can't be too safe. If you're going to be overly safe, you're just being safe to the level that you're comfortable with, and that is a-okay. All right, back to this. Yeah, a lot of blowout on this one. Sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah, a lot of blowout on this one. You can see there's pieces of wood sticking up out of this. And that's why this is sacrificial, so that I don't get those same things on here. These are all super clean round edges now, and they're all just really nice round edges. And sacrificial wood, way to go, I'm just saying. All right, I've got one more to do. I either have to cut these down, or let me just take a peek real quick. I might have one more board I can use in here, so I don't have to go over to the saw and cut one down. But it looks like all of my stuff that I've got in here is either the wrong thickness or, yeah, unfortunately. All right, so I've got to go back over to the saw here and cut one of these down, so which means I have to steel my plug, and I have to steel the air hose, because that's just how we do things in this shop. We just move things around. You know, it's good though. Get my exercise, move around. You know, it's all good. Which one do I want to do? I'm going to get this big one right here, which was, this one's done. Hang on a second. So let me go back over here. There we go. I'm going to just take this back over and cut these ends off and give me some nice clean corners that we can use again for the last base. I had 5, only had 4 blocks, so we'll have to that's the thing, is I just repurpose these. I just cut the corners off and we just keep on going. So let me turn this on. All right, one last one here. So we don't need to do that anymore, hopefully. I think that will do it. I can put this back and we can move on. So I actually do 2 router operations to these. Should probably clean that up while I'm here. I do the roundovers on the corners. They get a big giant roundover. which we've been working on here. But then I also do a 1/8" roundover. The 1/8" roundover is really super small. It's, I mean, it's a teeny little bit, but I love this bit because what it does is it's kind of like just breaks the edge. It breaks the edge of all these bases and just super, super small. I don't even, you probably can't even see it on there. It's a super small roundover, and it just breaks that edge. And usually what I like to do is right before I do my finish, like I'll do a 220 just finish sand, I will hit it with this, but not until after I've done all of the rest of my sanding. And there's a reason. So when we get over there, I'll explain that. But let me get the air, turn on the air here. Yes. All right, I kind of get carried away there, but man, this thing just throws stuff everywhere. I do not have, one of these days, I'll make a bottom catch for this router table. Basically put a box underneath it with a vacuum hose that can connect to it. And that way I can collect the dust that comes out the bottom of this thing. I don't have one of those right now. So yeah, I get dust that goes out this way and down the bottom, and it just makes a mess. So usually a lot of vacuuming occurs after I am done using, especially something like this. All right, let's get this last one set up here. And then we can move on. So I appreciate you watching this whole time because I know I keep doing the same thing. I try to avoid doing this, but I'm already set up and I didn't want to like do one of these and then save the rest. It's pretty quick. So I appreciate you hanging in there. Alrighty, that is done. So we have now all of these corners are completely done, and that's exciting. I'm very happy about that. And let me go ahead and switch this out. And I'm just going to get set up for my next one. I know I'm going to use this again, not right now, but I will use it again. So I'm going to unplug this, and I'm just going to go ahead and get this set up for the next one. Since I've got the bit here, let me grab my cover plates, and we're going to remove this one right here. Get that out of the way. Get my lift. I've sung the praises before. I will sing it again. If you can get a router table or make a router table, there's several of them out there that you can buy. The Tops Jessam makes one. I think that's really nice. A couple of different companies make lifts. Woodpecker makes one that, you know, if you want to sell one of your kidneys to buy one, I guess, because it's a woodpecker. So it is an impeccably made piece of machinery with an impeccable price tag. But they're super great. They have really precision lift systems to them, and they're just they're really, really nice. So if you can use a router table, I mean, there's even cheaper ones. Bosch makes a tabletop one that is basically, hang on a second. Bosch makes one that's a tabletop, and we're gonna go this way a little bit. And it stands maybe about this tall. I mean, I'm thinking maybe 12 to 18 inches up. And it's just a little cabinet, but you could put it on a bench, but you get all the functionality of a router table. And I'm telling you what, using a router table is such a different experience than using a router in your hands. It completely changes the way that you interact with the wood and the type of cuts that you can make and the type of operations that you can perform using a router. And so yeah, it's basically a completely different tool than a handheld router. I mean, it really is. Yes, you can put the same bits in it, but honestly, there's so much more you can do with a router table. I won't say more. There's so much more expanded capability. That's probably right with a router table. I use it much more than a handheld router, much more. So anyway, if you got the ability, like I said, you can actually build one yourself. There's plans out there for building your own router table. Because all you need is something, you need a lift. You're going to need a lift. Some routers actually have lifts built into them, like the router I'm using is a Triton router, in which case, I mean, this is a very fancy thing, but all you need is a board to mount it into underneath, and then you can make your adjustments however you need to be able to raise and lower it, even by hand. I mean, even if you have to loosen something and raise it. The real key is having the flat surface that you can push your wood into, pull it across, and do really, really special cuts on there. That is the key to a router table. So if you haven't thought you could, like, oh, I don't have the ability to put one into a table or whatever, go out and just Google, or don't Google, go to YouTube and just look it up. And I'm guarantee you will find a large number of handmade options out there that you could make for yourself. I'm just going to lower this down. I'm not going to set it up for the cut yet. But actually, you know what I'm going to do? Changing my mind here. I'm going to take this off because I don't know exactly when I'm going to get to that. And I'm just going to put the flat one on here. Just because I have one, which is so nice. So, yeah, having these little wide variety of sizes here is such a great thing. I only used to have 3, and then I found that they actually have a whole set that I could buy, and I did because it is awesome. All right, once again, Craig, one of my favorite manufacturers for tools. They really kind of have their pulse on what woodworkers use and need. They're always kind of looking at where the gaps are in the industry and where the gaps are and maybe in your workflow and finding ways to fill those gaps. And I, as a woodworker, really appreciate the fact that they do that. All right, so let us look at these and see where we're at here. Let's just see how we're doing. Hang on just one second. I'm gonna walk over here real quick, and I'm just gonna do something real quick here. I know I'm right in the way here. I'm just gonna tap right there, and I'm just gonna focus. I don't know if that was in focus. That's one thing I usually do before I get started, but I just kind of had a bunch of stuff going on this morning, and I didn't get a chance to set that focus. And I just want to make sure that it's pretty well in focus. It doesn't have to be super, super sharp, but I want it to be pretty well in focus. Ooh, I have to dust all these things out today. All right, no comments from the peanut gallery. I don't even know if there is a peanut gallery. So let me just make sure I've got nothing exciting going on here. I had bid on a sewing machine. Not that I want a new sewing machine, but I was going to get one for a reference machine for making a different type of base. And it got out of hand, so I let it go. You know, I didn't even care if it worked. I needed the dimensionality of it. So what time we got here? 12:30. I tell you what, if you would give me just a minute, I need to go and grab something to drink and do one other thing, and then we'll be back, and then we're going to kind of just talk about this and see where our next steps are. So hang with me for just a minute. Let's take a quick break and be right back. Alrighty, welcome back. Thank you. I had to get a drink. I was just frog in the throat and just dry, and it's that time of year. I don't have allergies per se, but when there's a ton of pollen, I mean, you don't have to have allergies for that much pollen to really bother you. So thank you for letting me run and take a quick break. So let's look at where we are with these bases, because we're really kind of getting down to the end of the line here on these. I say that, and I'm like, I look at them, I'm like, oh, I'm so close, and yet there's still work to be done. For one thing, I need to get this glob of glue out of this corner because, well, that's ridiculous. Can't leave that in there. But that's what a chisel's for. Chisels do great jobs at this. What was I saying? Oh, so yeah, I usually get to this point and I'm like, oh man, I'm so close to being done. And yet really I'm not. There is still a bit of work to do. And it's some of my least favorite work to be done, which is finishing. I don't mind sanding so much. Sanding doesn't really bother me. Most of the sanding I do is with my orbital sander. and it's just, I mean, it's repetitive. I just go through the grits, and usually I try to like, okay, if I've got the 120 grit on there, let me do 120, and I'll do all the boxes, and I do all the sides for 120. Okay, switch my grits, and I go to 150, and all the sides with 150. And then sometimes I'll do 220, but I think what I'm gonna, what I'm gonna do this time is I'm not gonna do the 220 on the random orbital sander. I'm gonna hand sand at 220. I don't like the hand sanding as much because there's more dust and dirt that comes with it, but I like the finish. That's what, let me grab one of these now. Look at these. So that's what I did with these, was I did a 120, a 150, and then I did just a hand sand on the 200. The hand sanding on the 200 is really just to make sure that I've left no pigtails on the wood surface. And pigtails are the little swirls that come from the random orbital sander. And in looking, here's the problem that I have when I finish, because I like these dark finishes. The finer grit that I use to sand these with, the less the stain penetrates into the wood. So if I like took this to 400, it would be super light, because I'm almost flattening and closing off the end of the wood. I'm burnishing it almost at that point, to the point where the stain doesn't soak in as far as it does. The less you sand, the further in, the rougher that wood's going to be, and the more the stain soaks in. So it's kind of like, for me, it's a balance. If I was using like something like a gel stain that just sits on top, then it wouldn't matter, because then it's not soaking in, it's sitting on top, and you just wipe it down to however dark you want it to be. I don't like gel stains for this. I haven't found a gel stain that I like for this kind of stuff. I use some gel stains for oak for my other bases, or for ones that I make out of like white oak. I'll use a gel stain on. But for these, to get this really dark kind of antique-y brown color, this is the stain combination I came up with. But like I said, it's a like, look at this, and you can just see same type of wood. I don't know if you can see that this looks much darker than this. And the reason being is this, because it's a drawer and it was going to sit underneath, I didn't really care as much. This did not get sanded as fine as this did. So the color is noticeable. The color difference is noticeable from this one to this one. Because this was sanded to a finer grit, it did not have as deep penetration with the stain as this one did. And that's kind of the big difference. And so if you want to go darker, you can do less. Now, here's the thing. I put that top coat on there. So if I don't go that dark with it, I mean, if I don't go that fine with the sandpaper, I still have that top coat of lacquer on there. And that top coat of lacquer, after I get about 4 or 5 coats on there, is going to be smooth and feel good. And like I said, I hit it with some 800 paper right before the last coat, and it comes out like just a beautiful smooth finish. Even if I don't sand it down to like a 400 grit, I still get that 400 grit feel. It's just a matter of how dark. Now, the big thing though is I need to make sure that I get rid of the pigtails. So there's that fine line between how dark is it going to be and am I getting rid of the pigtails. So that's why I wanted to grab this, because this is it's the same thing. This is cherry, and it's a nice big flat surface, which is what these are going to be. And that's why I want to kind of compare the two. So what I would probably end up doing with these is I will start with, and I'll go get some fresh sandpaper, is I will start with a 120 on here and sand these. And also the 120 helps because it's enough grit for me to really get these smooth. The roundovers are rough because it's cutting that, and it's end grain, so it's not a very smooth cut right here. This is really smooth. This, not so much. So it really helps me do that, and it helps me get rid of any burn marks, because there's some little burn marks here. Wherever you rest that, if you're not moving it all the time, that bit, you will get burn marks. So there's some burn marks, a little bit. I mean, they're not heavy. I've had much heavier. I used to run it faster, and I would get more burn marks. So I've really slowed that large bit down, and it really helps to control those burn marks, but I still have some. And I need to just get this thing, I mean, they're pretty smooth right now, but there's probably some milling marks in here. These aren't too bad. But there's a few milling marks in here where they've gone through like the jointer or they've gone through the planer. And so, you know, my thing is you want to get rid of the milling marks. You want to get rid of any of the other marks in there. And then you want to get the wood as smooth as possible. And then you want to get rid of any pigtails that are left from the more coarse grits that you've used. And that usually ends up going to 150 minimum. And then maybe using a 150 hand sanding, and I usually just do my hand sanding with these little pads. They're kind of nice. You can, I don't know where you get these things from. I got them from the woodworking show. Just look up sanding pads. These are made for the 5-inch sanding discs that I use for my orbital sander, and so they have Velcro that runs all the way up the side right here, or hook and loop, or whatever you want to call it. So it has Velcro across the whole surface, and these are great. They're kind of angled like a little race car. They call them a mouse, kind of shaped like a mouse, like a computer mouse. And they're nice, pretty flat, little bit of give on the bottom. They're not like super soft, but they are flat enough that it will easily follow the contours of what I'm working on here. I can easily work on roundovers with them and finish those off. So probably what I would do is, like I said, 120, 150, and then I'll put 150 on one of these and run it along with the grain, because that's going to help to remove any pigtails. And then finally, maybe just hand sand to 220. And is it 220? It is a 220. So I'll hand sand to 220, and that should furthermore reduce the scratches. I mean, when you're sanding, all you're doing is you're replacing coarse scratches with fine scratches. And you just keep getting finer and finer and finer until those scratches are to the point where you can't see them and it just looks like a smooth surface. That's what sanding is. It's not overly complicated. When you're using a round one, you're going in a circular motion, you're going across the grain. And so you need to keep going in those finer grits. But anyway, I think the orbital sander is like the greatest gift of woodworking since, I don't know, the knife. All right. So that's what I need to do with these. And I've got 5 of them to do. I will typically do all the sides. I also do the tops, and I lightly do the tops. I don't want to change, like I said, especially with the coarse grits, I don't want to change any of the dimensionality of this wood, which if I sand too long on one side, well, now the wood's going to be shorter. So I try not to change the dimensionality. Like I said, these things are sanded down to about where they're pretty much flush with the tops here, with the sides. So I don't want to change these out any. So all I'm trying to do with these is get any of the marks from like the plane blade that I used on here, get those worked out. And then I've also got pencil marks and such on here. Once I get them down to the 150 hand sanding, I will go back over to the router table and do my roundovers. And that cleans up any little bits and stuff. Like right here, I've got a tiny little chip out on the edge, but that'll get rounded over. Any other ones on here? I don't see any others, but typically you'll get little chippies on some of the corners here or some of the edges, because these are fairly sharp edges, and the roundover just does a nice job of smoothing all that out. But the other thing it does is it makes it pleasant on your hand to touch, right? So it's not a sharp edge. And it also gives a nice shadow line along the bottom of the box. It's just that teeny little roundover that gives it a shadow line that you can actually see the separation. So if I set it on a nice flat surface, it has a really pretty separation, a nice shadow line that just goes along the bottom. And it just, I don't know, it's just a nice little finishing touch, and that's why I love it. And that 1/8 inch is probably my favorite bit. You can't screw it up. Once you get the height set on there, you run it around. It's just perfect. I do save the 220 though on there, because if I did that first and then I did like the 150 and such, I would lose some of that roundover. So I save the round over till I'm almost completely done, and then I do the round over. All right, so we're pretty close. After the sanding comes the finishing, and that's not my favorite thing. Just because it takes so long. I just, you know, it takes a long time to do finishing. Especially I've got 5 bases, and then I have to set them up, and I have to do them in sections, and then you have to set them up on little pyramids to dry, and yeah, it's just a pain in the butt. So finishing is not my favorite part of the process, but it is part of the process. So, you know, it's one of those necessary evils. And some would argue that it's the most important part of the process, because you can take all of your time making a beautiful item and you put a bad finish on there and it just looks like poop. So, you know, it's probably one of the most important parts of the process, but doesn't have to be my favorite. It can still be my least favorite part. Even though it's probably one of the most important parts, it's still my least favorite. So there's that. So I'll tell you what, I will not make you watch me sand all of these because that would be incredibly boring. But I will sand one of them and get set up for that. So I have this extension hose that I got from Rockler. It's like a small tool hose. And then I have one of these, what is this? This is a 1.5 inch to 2 inch coupler with the band clamps on there. So the 2 inch goes on the end of the hose. The 1.5 fits perfectly on my rigid on my rigid hose right here. And it's actually a little loose. I could probably tighten that up just a little bit, but just so it's a nice little friction fit. So that gives me some extra hose to work with. This is much more flexible than the hose that comes on the rigid. And I hook that up, and then what else we got going here? I need some power to the sander. So I got power to the sander. Like I said, I just use this little skill. It works great for me. I think I got this at Lowe's maybe for 50 bucks, somewhere around there. It wasn't very expensive, but it does a great job. I'm going to go over here and grab some sandpaper out of my sandpaper drawer. So I generally use this stuff called Diablo, and I've been really happy with it. You can buy it at Home Depot. It's nice because I can get it in like these 50 packs. So I'm going to grab a 120. I'm going to grab a new 150. And I'm going to grab I think I've got one in here. Let me see if I've got a 220 in here. I should. Yeah, I've got a 220. So I'm going to grab 3 grits. All right. So I have a 150 or a 120, a 150, and a 220. Some people go to a 180 in between. I've never really seen the need for doing that, but some folks really like to, I don't know, get that extra grit in there. One thing I am going to do is take just a moment and just move some garbage off of the bench here. Not garbage, it's like clamps. But I make some room, basically is what I'm going to do. I've got my little clamp stand thing over here, or holder that I made just to hold these clamps and get them out of my way. And I'm just trying to give myself a little room to work over here. And oh, these need to go back in the box. All right, I think we're about ready to do some sanding here. So like I said, I will start with a 120. And one thing I like to do with my sandpaper, I might have shown you this before, but one thing I like to do with my sandpaper is I take like a black, it's like a Sharpie, but it's a permanent marker. And like right here at the top, what I like to do is write the grit like that. So there you go, 120. This one is 150, and then 220. Now, you may be saying, but Jeff, it already has the grits on the back. And it does. You can see it right there. It says 220 right there, 220. It does say that. But what happens is after a little while, when you've been using these things and you're swapping out, those numbers on the back get harder and harder to see. Now you tell me what number that is. I got no idea. I mean, and the dust always gathers in the place where the number is and you can't see what it is. So in order to figure that out, like this one, hard to read, but look, 120, I know what it is. So I always do that. It's a little thing. I mean, you don't have to do that. But look at this one. I can't read that number, but up top, I know it's a 150 because I wrote it on there. And it's been used. I try to use my sandpaper as much as possible. I try to get as much life out of it as I can. But when it gets dusty and it's hard to tell which grid it is, and I want to switch, having that little, 2 seconds of writing on there with a permanent marker, it's just such a nice thing. All right. The other thing that I do to keep my my sandpaper healthy is to clean it out every now and then. After I've used it, I'll just take a stiff brush and I'll just clean the fiber or clean out the little bits of dust that have caked inside there. And that makes a huge difference. So the other thing I have, I've probably seen this all over the place, is I just have these little rubber foamy mat things that I use. I just put one of these down. I'm gonna take this out. But I put one of these down just to kind of keep the vibrations down and to keep it from sliding all over the wooden work surface. And it just provides a little bit of padding so that I'm not marring the bottom part if I slide it across my work surface. So I'm gonna put my ears on here because it gets loud. And let's go ahead and do some exciting sanding. Okay, so that's the 120 done, and like if you notice on the bottom, I do a really easy light pass on the bottom. Um, if you had been watching for a while, not today, but across the series of this build, you'll notice that I put it on the table and then flattened it out. I hand plane this thing so that it is very flat sitting on my cast iron table over there. And if I use an aggressive grit, which I think 120 to me is a fairly aggressive grit. If I use a 120 on this bottom for any period of time with any severe pressure, I'm going to take this out of flat. And that's the last thing I want to do. So at this close to the end, I want to make sure that it maintains its flatness. The top, not as important. I mean, in terms of flatness, I mean, it is, but I don't spend a long time here. This is a surface, though, that you're going to see. So I want to make sure that it's clean and it looks nice. And then I put you notice that I sanded the top, the lid, also got sanded while it was sitting in the base because I want it to, like I said, be flat and flush and marry up to this surface right here really well. So now one place I see that I didn't hit great is right here, and I'm just going to hit that really quickly before I switch grits. And I love this in the wood right here. It's some people would call it a defect. It's kind of this dark spot. Cherry gets these in the wood sometimes, and I think it can look really good. So right in the top here, let's see, you can see it better over here. So there's this dark spot right here. I kind of like it. It adds character. So I chose to actually have that as a feature of the wood and put it up top instead of hiding it on the underside. Anyway, that is the 120. And then what I'm going to do is pop that off. I'm going to come over here and grab the 150 and line up my little air holes on the bottom here. The reason I like these is they're nice because they have 4 large holes. Sorry. They have 4 large holes, but then they have smaller ones that line up. My sander has 8 holes in the bottom. So even though there's only 4 large holes here, when I line up the 4 big holes to put it on here, like that, these little ones are still matched. Like these holes right here are still matched over top of some of the other holes in here. So I still get really efficient dust removal from this. And these pads are made so if you have even more holes, it'll even do a better job. So, all right, let's go ahead and do some 150 sanding. And I'm gonna take a little bit more time, go a little bit slower. I use really light pressure. I'm not pushing really hard. I don't wanna, you know, like I said, I don't wanna change the surface any. I just wanna remove scratches now. All right, that's the 150, and it's very smooth now. One thing that I can do is kind of dust these off with a brush, which removes the fibers from the, I'm going to grab my, just the hose here, removes the dust from inside the fibers here. So if I rub it like this, you can't see it, but yeah, that was disgusting. There's a lot of dust still left in here. And by just brushing it out, it'll change. Right now it feels a little coarse, but when I brush it out, it'll feel so much smoother. So much better. And really all I want to do is get that dust out of there so that the next sanding that I do is just dealing with the raw wood and not compacted sawdust, which I don't really need my ears for this next part. So this last part that I'm going to do, well, almost last part I'm going to make you watch. I'm going to take this one off of here. Is this, no, this is a 150. So this is exactly what I want, is a 150. Clear the sawdust out of my mouth. Actually, let me change. My fan's going here down below, but it just change the direction that the air is pulling from on here, just so that I'm pulling as much of that sawdusty air through my filter system. All right, because that's the other thing. We're just trying to keep this airborne particulate, and especially when I go to hand sanding, it creates a lot more dust in the air, in which case I'm actually going to put on a mask for this part. When I do, if I'm doing any amount of hand sanding, I would just wear, I don't go crazy with the mask. It's just a simple mask. It's a little, dust mask, but it can make a big difference when you're doing hand sanding, because you're just pushing that dust up and it just flows around. So little dust mask, keep the lungs kind of clean, because I'm going to go abuse them on my bicycle later probably. Really gorgeous. Yesterday I had a really nice ride yesterday. It was really just pretty outside. So remember, the whole point of this is to go with the grain and just take any scratches out from that last grit, which was a 150, same grit, but this time instead of circular, we're going with the grain. Hopefully take any last little scratches out from that. It doesn't require a lot, but a significant amount of debris, dust, sawdust, and such. So let me clean this out, and I'm going to get the hose and the brush again. And this is why it just takes so long, is because, I do this every time, and so I've got 5 of these to do this whole process too. So you can see why I would normally go 120 paper and I'll just do all the boxes. And then I switch to 150 and I do all the boxes. It just makes it a faster process than having to do one box and then start the whole thing over again. So I'm going to work on these corners just a little bit, just to make sure that they're nice and rounded and maintain the shape that we put in them. and just kind of round it this way. The thing about corners is, like I said, it's end grain. We know what end grain does. End grain likes to soak up all of our stain. So if we give a little extra attention to sanding that end grain, it will balance the color out a little better against the rest of the base. So that's pretty good. And let me just hit all the corners here while I'm doing this. I need to still do the sides here. If you saw me actually take the orbital sander on that last pass to the bottom of the base, like the flat part of the bottom of the base, I will usually do that once. But you have to be really careful when sanding on, you have to be careful when you're sanding on plywood because they're very thin veneers and you can really easily burn through one of the veneers and then you're left looking at a hole. Not a hole, but you're burned through to the next level. It looks bad. So let me clean this off. Okay. Set this over here. Might be better. There we go. And then we'll do this side. And the hand sanding doesn't take too long. Like I said, it's just want to get some nice long strokes in there and get any little stuff cleaned out. Okay, so one other thing I do, I'm going to go ahead and hit the bottom here. One other thing I do while I have the 150 on here is I will soften the edges of these handles because right now they're really, I cut these way back when. I cut these on the CNC machine and they are super sharp on the edges here. And obviously if you're picking up, you don't want really sharp edges. So I can't run the roundover bit inside that handle. I wish I could, but it's just too big. So I do around the edges, but I need to soften those edges so that when you grab these things, it's a little bit more pleasing to the fingers. So I just give it a little. Now on these sides, go with the grain here and with the grain. That's all I'm doing. I'm just lightly passing over here. We'll do the top. And usually I'll use like instead of doing the middle where it can round it a little bit, I'll use the edge to keep it flat when I'm doing these edges up here. Because I can also have my thumb sticking just slightly over the edge, and that way I can keep it riding right against that line there. And it helps just to get it just where I want it. So by the time I've got to this point, it's pretty much flat and I'm not taking off too much wood, but there's a lot of sawdust on here. You can see this thing, hand sanding does create a lot of sawdust. And then the last thing I can do instead of having it in the base is just hit this over here really quickly. I'm not, like I said, not flattening it very much, just smoothing it. Yeah. Drop the remote. All right, so I mean that feels really nice. There's nothing here running, so kind of stupid. That feels really nice now. The only thing left for me to do is to soften these edges, and then we can, when I get all of the bases to that point, what I will do is take them over to the router table, and we will, let's see what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of hitting this at a 45-degree angle, and just giving this a little bit of a softer edge right here. And then I kind of do the same on the sides right here. Just cleaning them out. I don't want them to feel rough. They don't have to be super glossy smooth, but enough that, you know, it just feels comfortable when you lift it. That's okay, I'm gonna do the same thing to this one. So this is gonna get the same treatment. That's why I like these pads, because I can just kind of get in here and work in some of these areas. And I couldn't do this with my orbital sander, there's no way. But I'm just breaking this edge, which was a nice crisp 90-degree edge, but I'm breaking it a little bit and rounding it over so that it just feels a little bit more comfortable in your hand. Now, sometimes, not always, but sometimes I'll actually break over this little edge right here too, just enough to, like that. I mean, just barely. I didn't do it on this one, I should. Just barely knocking that edge off there, but it's just taking a little bit off, which makes that much difference. Yep. And the other thing I like about doing that by hand is that you can tell that I did that by hand. If you come over and look at this, you can see right where I did that. And I kind of just like that. It has that, you know, hey, this wasn't all done by a machine kind of thing. It has that look to it, like there's handwork involved in this, which there's a lot of handwork involved in this. But anyway, I kind of like that look. Okay, with the exception of doing a round over on everything, and then I'll do the round over inside here too. So I do the round over inside here, I do it all around the perimeter here, and I do it all around the perimeter of the bottom. Once that round over is done, I will go back and grab a 220 pad, do one more surface on their surface sanding really lightly, and then it's ready for stain. I mean, that's really the last step to these things. So that's where I'm going to cut off now. And next week when we come back, these will all be sanded, because I won't make you watch me do that again. I don't like watching me do that. Why should I make you do it? But I'm going to do all of the sanding on these one more time. Or not one more time, but I'm going to do all the sanding on them. And then we will... Whew, that's dusty. We will move on from there. And my Facebook one. Any? We will not a comment in the stream, but a comment that I got from a buddy of mine. But we will do the hand sanding with the round over, and maybe we'll stain one because we'll be at that point, right? So maybe I'll go ahead and start one to be stained Not making you watch the whole thing, but part of it. And oh, by the way, this, you see this light strip in here? This is sapwood. I think that looks awesome. People try to avoid putting sapwood. Now I put it in the back, because not everybody digs sapwood, but I think sapwood and cherry anyway just looks amazing. I love the color variance in there, and so I'm never afraid to put sapwood in my projects. I get it. Sometimes you'll get it in walnut a little bit. Cherry, you'll find a lot of them that have sapwood in them. I love the sapwood. I love that color variance in there and stuff. So I'm not afraid of that. This piece you can see is actually much older and been sitting around much longer than this piece of wood, because look how dark this is. This is what happens to cherry when it's been out for a while. It starts to get darker and darker as it kind of like mixes with the air, oxidizes, and turns darker. Cherry just does beautiful things. When I put stain on there, you won't notice that it's really that much darker. But if I do an oil stain on this, like this would just look amazing with an oil-based stain, like a, I don't know, like a Danish oil or something. Not what we're doing. People like the darker ones. I've tried lighter ones, like just oil. They don't sell as well. People just like the dark ones. So that's what I do. I give the people what they want. And let's see, what do I want? I want to get some lunch, wash my hands, let the dust clear out for a minute, and then I'll come back and I'll finish sanding all these things either today or tomorrow, one of the two. But that's exciting, man. We've made a lot of progress here. It's hopefully you've been along for part of the ride anyway and seen. If you haven't, you can always go back and check. And like I said, this is episode 15. So you can go back and check and see our progress on these things. Oh, and next week, Friday, in 2 days, Friday, I will have hopefully the tiny sewing machine table, the toy sewing machine table, all lacquered up. And maybe we can put that together too and see what that looks like. That'd be kind of fun. And then, yeah, that'll be that one done. That's crazy. Okay. Have a great day. If you're here, if you've been here and you want to hit the like button or the not like button, the unlike button, the dislike button, but hit the like button instead. It's just more fun that way. Facebook, if you want to do me a follow, subscribe, doesn't cost you anything. Looks good for me though. So if you're on or YouTube, actually you have to follow on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitch. If you want to do those things, I would so appreciate that. If you could just move the mouse button or just give just a little click. That'd be awesome. Wednesday, Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern time, I am here. Hopefully I'll see you here too. Until then, have a great rest of your day. See you later.